Hey people, John here from Fast Films, and today we're going through a 2001 war action movie called As Far As My Feet Will Carry Me. The movie begins in Bayern 1944 when people are boarding a train. A lieutenant named Clemens Forel is about to leave for war. Before he leaves, his wife comes with his daughter Lisa to tell him that they're having a baby. Later on, we see a court charge against Clemens and he is sentenced to 25 years of forced labor. In the next scene, we see the prisoners being transported to a prison called Cape Desnev in a train, and they try to stay alive and warm in the cold, and Clemens is one of them. In the next scene, a man comes to give Lisa a postcard which she takes to her mother in the church which says they know nothing of Clemens' whereabouts. Lisa prays her father comes back home. On the train, the men ask a man called Danhorn about the location of Cape Desnev and he tells them it will take ages to get there. Then the train stops and they are commanded to go down, and Clemens goes to pick up firewood and remembers his wife. In the next scene, they all are given food. Later at night, they all worry they'll eliminate them. Clemens comforts a young prisoner, and then looks at his family's picture and sleeps. Moments later, the soldiers come to take them away into the thick cold in Siberia, and some of them are eliminated on the way. Clemens still thinks of his wife. Later on, they arrive at Cape Desnev prison camp in 1946. The major commander speaks to a man named Lieutenant Kamenev about his responsibilities. In the next scene, a doctor named Stoffer demands penicillin for a sick prisoner from a female doctor named Dr. Pachmutova, but she refuses. After that, Lieutenant Kamenev comes to tell Dr. Pachmutova and Stoffer that it's time to examine the prisoners. Outside, while the prisoners are being examined, Lieutenant Kamenev orders the young prisoner to take off his coat and Clemens attempts to give him his clothes, but the lieutenants send them away and eliminate the prisoner. The prisoners are later cleaned up and put to work. On the other side, Clemens' wife goes to the National Committee of Free Germany to ask about Clemens but gets no information. In the next year, the prisoners are seen doing work. 2 years later, in 1949 they were still working. Accidentally, Danhorn gets eliminated while working. Immediately after, Lieutenant Kamenev calls Clemens to fix the generator and he does. After he finishes, he tries to escape but is caught. In the next scene, Clemens is seen locked down and Lieutenant Kamenev comes to speak to him and sets him free. He is taken to his comrades who later beat him up. Dr. Stoffer comes to check on him, and Kamenev orders that he be taken to the sick bay. Up next, Dr. Stoffer notices Clemens is running a fever and hopes it isn't typhoid. Back at home, Lisa thinks of her father and sends him a message in her mind. In the prison, Dr. Stoffer tells Clemens he can help him to escape from the prison. At night, Dr. Pachmutova and Stoffer examine the prisoners. Dr. Pachmutova checks up Clemens who has a fever, and then he orders penicillin and smiles at him. Kamenev notices it and is enraged with jealousy and orders that Clemens is declared fit for work. Dr. Stoffer tells Clemens to come to see him at night. Later on, Clemens goes to see Dr. Stoffer. While they talk, Kamenev comes to knock and Clemens hides. Kamenev comes in, offers Stoffer a drink, then leaves. Stoffer gives Clemens some clothes and supplies. Stoffer tells Clemens the supplies are for his escape, but he won't escape because he has cancer, and requests that Clemens must go to see his wife if he succeeds to escape. Outside, Kamenev tries to make out with Pachmutova but she refuses. Kamenev accuses Pachmutova of flirting with the Germans, referring to Clemens, because Kamenev is Russian. Later on, Clemens escapes. The next morning, Kamenev comes to confront Dr. Stoffer but finds that he has eliminated himself. In the next scene, Clemens is seen hallucinating in the snow, but he recovers soon. Later on, Kamenev goes to order the men to work, but they refuse to work without food and decide rather be eliminated. The search patrol for Clemens reports back that they didn't find him, which doesn't please Kamenev. After that, the major commander tells Kamenev he has lost control of the camp. In the snow, Clemens runs out of food and prays. He later passes out and then wakes up to find a seal and he chases it but injures his leg in the process, and later eliminates it. He uses the fat from the animal to heal his foot. Later on, he makes his way through the snow with his compass. He later finds a tree that excites him that he is close to civilization. Back in the prison, Kamenev still tries to find Clemens after 2 months of his escape. In the snow, Clemens wakes up from sleep to find 2 armed men named Simeon and Anastas watching him. They tell him that they won't harm him and offer to help him, but he refuses. Later on, a snowstorm begins and a tree falls on Clemens, and Simeon comes to help him. Later in spring, in 1950, Clemens thinks of his daughter, Lisa. In the next scene, we see Lisa in deep thought. Later on, Clemens, Anastas, and Simeon sail on a raft, and Clemens makes a joke for Anastas to sail him home. They reach a waterfall, where Simeon falls off, and Clemens jumps in the water to save him. In the next scene, Anastas reaches a cabin, and Clemens and Simeon come to meet him. Anastas takes the gold out of Simeon's bag. Later on, Simeon eliminates Anastas. After that, Simeon convinces Clemens to follow him. Later on, while traveling, Anastas throws Clemens off a cliff because of his gold. Immediately, Lisa wakes up from a nightmare about her father and her mother comes to comfort her. Later on, Clemens wakes up and is attacked by wolves, but some men named Kolka and Alyoshka come to save him. In the next scene, Kolka's tribesmen perform some healing on Clemens. Clemens later wakes up and Kolka introduces him to Irina, whose grandfather had healed him. Later on, Irina's grandfather takes care of Clemens and then Irina comes to see him and they make out. In the morning, Clemens gets up, which makes Irina happy. At the prison, Kamenev keeps looking for Clemens and makes some investigations. Later on, the state security announces they are looking for a German spy named Clemens and Kolka overhears this. Later at night, Kolka tells Clemens they are looking for him and Clemens decides to leave. In the morning, Kolka sends Clemens away with a dog named Argish and Irina drops him off. When they arrive at where he leaves, Irina gives him a gift and they separate. In 1951, Argish gets into some trouble with some men who take Clemens. They ask for his name and he lies to them that he has finished his forced labor and he is going to a place called Cheetah. The comrade inspector tells him to go get some food outside. Outside, he's told a freight train is going to Cheetah, and he has a plan to be going as the brakeman. In the next scene, Clemens is seen happy on the train. Meanwhile, we see Kamarev arriving at the prison. A man named Lieutenant Zykov comes to inform him a unit is ready for the operation. Later on, at night, the train arrives at Cheetah and Clemens escapes with Argish. The soldiers look for him to no avail, but Clemens runs into Kamenev, and Argish attacks Kamenev. The soldiers chase after him, but he escapes onto another train. In the next scene, Clemens finds his way to a small settlement and rests. The next day, as he walks through the desert, he spots a man and runs away, but he seems to be hallucinating. Later on, Clemens repeats a poem to himself. We later see Lisa give a presentation of a poem in front of her class too. In the next scene, a man driving a truck has a flat tire and goes behind his truck to get his equipment, but he runs into Clemens in the back of his truck and attacks him, but Clemens eliminates him and runs. In 1952, Clemens goes through a market and he is very hungry. One woman in the market gives him food for free, and a Jewish man notices this. Clemens runs away to eat the food and notices a church. He goes in there and prays for forgiveness. The Jewish man walks in and recognizes that he is German, and offers to help him by taking him to his house. A man praying nearby notices Clemens and goes to the Soviet police headquarters to report it. Later on, at the Jewish man's house, he and Clemens start to talk. The Jewish man asks him if he was in a camp, but he doesn't answer. He tells him he needs a passport to cross the borders, and they discuss a choice of name. Clemens asks why he is helping him, even though the Jewish man mentions that the Germans killed his Jewish brothers, but he knows not all the German soldiers knew about it. In the next scene, Kamenev is seen driving across a desert. At night, after Clemens has cleaned himself up, the Jewish man tells him to wait in his house until he returns with his passport. We see Kamenev still driving at night. The Jewish man returns and finds Clemens has gone. He goes to the church and finds him, and Clemens tells him he is only being careful. He gives him his passport and travel permit and tells him to say he's Latvian. Clemens asks him why he is helping him again, but the Jewish man tells him he wants to, and Clemens leaves. Later at night, Kamenev arrives at the Soviet police headquarters. Up next, Kamenev goes to visit the Jewish man to question him about Clemens. Later on, Clemens goes to the travel checkpoint and boards the vehicle. At the Jewish man's house, Kamenev speaks to the Jewish man about his suspicions, and he denies having helped Clemens. Later on, the Jewish man collapses having eliminated himself and tells Kamenev he had helped Clemens. The next morning, on the trip, they meet a soldier who tells them there's been a landslide and Clemens decides to walk to the border. He gets to the border and tells the man there that he has to cross today before his travel permit expires. The soldier tells him he can go across the bridge. Clemens gets to the middle of the bridge and runs into Kamenev again. They both stare at each other, and Kamenev lets him pass, declaring that he has defeated him. In the next scene, in 1952, Clemens is seen in prison and is taken as a Soviet spy. He requests for his uncle named Mr. Bodrexel to come to identify him. Bodrexel asks him a series of questions and identifies him. In the next scene, Clemens is seen going to his house and he sees his wife and children but hides himself. In the final scene, in a church, Lisa spots Clemens and goes to hug him, and so does his wife. Thanks for watching, guys.